They only chase what they can't catch. They only want what doesn't need them. The moment you step off the stage of their approval, they gather at the curtains, desperate for an encore you'll never perform again. People are trained to circle weakness like vultures. The hesitations, the insecurities, the need for a nod, a smile, a pat on the back. They smell it on you like blood. But once you cauterize that wound, once you tear out the part of yourself that craves to be liked, you become untouchable. The hand that fed them your soul withdraws, and in that emptiness, they find the taste of fear. They're no longer fed by your applause. They're starving for the crumbs of your attention, and you've turned your back. In a world that demands your constant explanation, your endless compromise, your ceaseless dance for belonging, silence becomes a weapon. Detachment becomes a throne. You stop trying to be good in their eyes and become true in your own. You stop playing roles that keep you soft enough to squeeze, compliant enough to mold. The world calls it selfish. They'll call you distant, cold, indifferent. But there is nothing colder than a smile forced through gritted teeth. There is nothing more suffocating than needing hands that only ever wanted to hold you down. They raise you on the illusion that being needed is being loved. But Machiavelli knew better. Better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Better to be respected than owned. He never wrote for the agreeable. He wrote for the untamed, for those willing to disappoint the crowd to save themselves. He understood this dark truth. When you stop needing anyone, you become the only one they all need. They'll gather around the heat they cannot possess. They'll whisper your name when you're not there, because your absence is more powerful than their presence. Most people live begging for a seat at tables that serve poison with the wine. They make themselves palatable. Bite-sized pieces, easy to digest, easy to spit out when convenient. But you refuse the invitation. You stand outside the walls they've built, unconcerned whether the gates open for you or not. You don't knock, you don't ask. You build your own fortress, your own table, your own feast. And those same people who laughed at your solitude begin to tremble when they realize you've made loneliness your ally. You see, a man who fears being alone will crawl for company. He'll betray himself to avoid empty rooms. But a man who walks willingly into the desert of solitude returns untouchable. He's tasted his own darkness and did not choke. He sat in silence until it turned to steel in his veins. He's met his monsters and made them kneel. And when he comes back, there is nothing you can take from him. You can't blackmail him with rejection. You can't bind him with your approval. You can't cage him with your love, because he loves his freedom more. They'll call you ruthless when you stop explaining. They'll call you arrogant when you stop apologizing for who you've become. Let them. These words are chains made of paper. They burn the moment you light the fire of your own indifference. Machiavelli knew the prince must not show all his cards. Mystery is power. Secrecy is survival. The less they know about your needs, the less they can poison them. The systems, puzzle and advises are held together by secrecy. The less they hear of your thoughts, the less they can twist them. You stand behind a wall of quiet strength, and every rumor they spread about you only cements your legend further. A world addicted to taming wildness will never forgive you for remaining feral. They'll try to break your teeth, dull your claws, sweeten your growl, until you're just another obedient pet in their garden. And when you refuse, when you bare your fangs instead of your throat, you become the monster in their bedtime stories, the one they whisper about but dare not confront. Because deep down, they crave the danger you embody. They want to stand close enough to your fire to feel the warmth, but not so close they're consumed by it, and they never will. When you kill the need to be understood, you become an unsolvable puzzle. They'll examine your silences like ancient runes, looking for clues to bring you back to the cage. But you've thrown away the key. They cannot follow you into the wilderness you now call home. The need for approval is a leash, and your teeth have severed it at the root. You roam where they fear to tread. They envy your distance because it reminds them of how small their world has become. They wonder who you think you are. They accuse you of thinking you're better than them. And the truth that terrifies them most is that you don't think about them at all. Their praise is noise, their scorn is wind. Both pass through you without leaving a mark. You belong to yourself now. That is your final act of rebellion. They can't threaten to leave you because you've already left them. They can't threaten to withdraw their love because you no longer see it as treasure. Love offered as ransom is not love. You want none of it. You become the storm they pray will pass, yet long to feel. You become the silence that fills the room when they speak your name. You become a ghost in their minds, impossible to touch, unforgettable to forget. Everybody wants you because you no longer need anybody. You've stopped pouring yourself into their empty cups. You've become the ocean they can drown in, but never drain. And they will try. Oh, they will try. But their hands pass through your waves. You're ungraspable, a tide that rises and falls on your own terms. Power is not in domination alone. It's in withdrawal, the terror of the unknown. The empty chair you once filled, now haunting them with possibilities. They invent stories to explain your distance. They blame themselves, then blame you, then blame fate. Anything but accept that your absence is a choice, not a punishment. That you've simply outgrown the circus. That you've chosen your own path through the thorns, unafraid of the cuts that come with sovereignty. Most will never understand. They can't fathom loving without possessing. They can't imagine loyalty without conditions. They don't know how to breathe in the rare air of self-sufficiency. So, they worship you and resent you in equal measure. They call you the villain because you refuse to be their slave. They paint you as the betrayer because you refuse to betray yourself. Let them paint, let them talk. You've stopped performing for their gallery. You're busy creating your own masterpiece. One brushstroke at a time, alone if necessary, glorious all the same. And when they gather outside your gates, whispering, pleading, promising to be different, you stand at the window and watch without pity. Not out of cruelty, but clarity. You know now that anyone who needs you to need them will only drain you dry. You've learned the lesson Machiavelli embedded in every line of his cold, brilliant counsel. Do not fear to be feared. Do not fear to be alone. Fear only the loss of your own will, your own mind, your own throne. Lose that, and you belong to everyone. Keep it, and you belong to no one. And yet everyone will want a piece they can never have. So you stand there, the untamed, the unbroken, the unchained, the one they gossip about when the lights go out, the one they want to tame, to save, to possess, but never will. You are the proof that freedom is possible and that truth alone makes you dangerous. Because your existence mocks their chains. Your solitude exposes their cowardice, and your silence, oh, your silence, becomes the roar that shakes their tiny, trembling kingdoms to the ground. You are the reminder that nobody owns you, nobody defines you, nobody commands your loyalty but you. In your withdrawal is your power, in your detachment is your crown. In your refusal to need them, you become the only thing they want. Everybody wants you when you don't need anyone. And that is the empire they can never conquer. And when you stand at that window, watching their hands pressed against the glass, you feel no desire to open it. You understand now that most people are not drawn to you out of love for what you are, but hunger for what they can drain from you. The moment you make peace with your solitude, you become something they can no longer feed upon. Their need turns to desperation. They spin tales that you've changed, that you've lost your heart, that you've become cold stone. But the truth is far simpler. You've become whole. You've retrieved every piece of yourself you once scattered in their hands. Each apology that cost you your spine, each forced smile that dulled your teeth. You stand before your own reflection and you see no cracks, no borrowed shapes. Only the outline of a sovereign soul who has nothing left to beg for. They linger at the edges of your silence, hoping your walls will crumble under the weight of their absence. But they never understood. Your walls are not a prison. They're a sanctuary. While they wait for you to come crawling back, you sit in stillness that feeds itself. They wonder how you survive without their praise, their conversation, their validation. But your roots run deep beneath the surface, where their shallow eyes cannot see. You learn to drink from the underground rivers of your own will, your own resolve. You discovered that what you once sought in their eyes, approval, affection, meaning, was always yours to give, never theirs to own. They think they can punish you with distance. But distance is where you thrive. They think they can break you with silence. But silence is your fortress. They believe that by withdrawing their warmth, they can freeze you into submission. They forget you have already built your kingdom in the ice. You've danced with your own shadows long enough to fear no night. And when the sun rises, it does so on your terms, not theirs. Machiavelli knew the game. He knew that people are pliable when they crave the applause of the crowd. He wrote for those who choose to step off the stage, who would rather be whispered about in fear than adored in chains. He knew that when you detach from the need to be loved, you are no longer a subject. You are the ruler of your own empire, no matter how small that empire may be. He knew that reputation is not built by yielding, but by standing immovable when others bend. That's the root of all fear, the realization that they cannot shape you. They test your boundaries, hoping to find a crack. A small compromise here, a swallowed truth there, a half-hearted apology for a crime you didn't commit. But you give them nothing. They rage, they pout, they smear your name in whispers you'll never hear, and still you stand, untouched by their games. Your mind does not race to win them back. Your tongue does not rush to mend the bridge they burned. You let the ashes scatter in the wind because you've learned that some bridges are not meant to be rebuilt. They're meant to stay in ruin as monuments to your evolution. They will accuse you of cruelty when you cut them off. They will call you heartless when you refuse to be their puppet. But cruelty is not in the refusal. It was in their demand that you contort yourself into a shape that pleased them at your expense. True cruelty is the expectation that you would trade your freedom for their comfort. So let them speak. Let them cry, betrayal. Their tears are no longer your currency. You spend your energy where it multiplies, on the rare few who see your solitude not as a threat to be conquered, but as a sanctuary to be respected. When you no longer need to be needed, you attract those who stand on their own feet. The manipulators slip away like oil on water. The clingers fall off like dead leaves in autumn. What remains are the builders, the warriors, the ones who come to your door not with empty cups, but with full hands. They do not demand to be your reason for living. They want to walk beside you, sovereign to sovereign, whole to whole. And when you meet those souls, you do not fear losing yourself, because you know you would never trade your crown for any throne they might offer. You see it clearly now. The game they play is simple. Keep you dependent, keep you predictable. Praise you when you obey, punish you when you don't. But once you step outside that game, they have no moves left. Their tactics, guilt, gossip, withdrawal. Lose all bite. You've removed the hooks from your skin, the strings from your back. You move through the world with an unsettling calm because they cannot fathom a person who will not be leashed by loneliness. They want your anger because anger is still a bond, a reaction, a proof that they matter enough to move you, but you give them only indifference. They want your explanation because explanations open doors they can crawl back through, but you offer only silence. They want your remorse because remorse keeps you kneeling, but your back stays straight, your eyes level, your soul untethered. There is no going back for you, no place at the table you once begged to sit at. You've built your own, and only the worthy may approach. People love to play savior until you save yourself. Then they hate you for it. They needed your brokenness more than you ever needed their help. Now they cannot stand the sight of you standing tall. Proof that they were never your rescue, but your cage. And so they'll whisper that you've grown cold, bitter, unreachable. But what they call unreachable, you know as freedom. What they call bitter, you know as clarity. What they call cold, you know as your shield against the frost of their betrayal. You are not stone. You are iron, forged in the fire of your solitude. Your kindness is not gone. It is now a blade you wield with purpose, no longer scattered like confetti at anyone's feet, but gifted with intention, where it cannot be twisted into a chain around your throat. You choose who receives your warmth, who earns your loyalty, who tastes the privilege of your presence. That choice is your sovereignty. That choice is the throne they cannot topple. Watch them gather. They come with sweet words now. You've changed. Yes, you have. You've become so distant. Yes, you have. You think you're better than us. No. You know you're better than the version of you who once needed their empty praise. That is the only comparison that matters. You do not compete with them. You do not measure yourself by their standards. You hold your reflection up only to your past self and ask, am I truer now? And if the answer is yes, then let the world rage. They will poke at you, hoping to resurrect the old version, the one who flinched when they frowned, who apologized for existing, who begged for crumbs of affection. But that ghost is gone, buried under miles of midnight conversations with your own demons. That ghost was the sacrifice required to become untouchable. You mourned it, you grieved, and now you wear its ashes like war paint. This is what they don't understand. Your indifference is not emptiness. It is the fullness of a self no longer starved for scraps. Your withdrawal is not cruelty. It is the kindness of not pretending anymore. You no longer waste your breath, softening truths to spare feelings that would never spare yours. You no longer lace your tongue with sugar when poison is what they offer you in return. Your presence is not a given, your attention is not owed, your forgiveness is not a ritual, it is a choice, and rarely given twice. And yet, ironically, the less you offer, the more they crave. They circle your silences like wolves around a fire, drawn to the heat they cannot touch. They want to know what you're thinking, feeling, planning, but you offer no clues. They wonder who holds your heart now, who sits beside you in the fortress of your solitude. The truth is, often, no one. And that terrifies them more than any rival ever could. For a person who needs no one cannot be replaced. A person who wants no savior cannot be conquered. A person who finds solace in solitude becomes the storm that washes away their illusions of control. They cannot bribe you with promises of belonging. They cannot threaten you with exile. You carry your home within you now, and it is built of walls they can never breach. Machiavelli would nod in approval. Not because you are cruel, but because you understand the anatomy of power. Its root is always detachment. He would see in you the living proof that respect is not granted to those who kneel, but to those who stand, even when standing means standing alone. So let them talk. Let them spin tales of your downfall, your bitterness, your loneliness. Let them believe you will one day return, broken by the weight of your own independence. You know the truth. There is no return to who you were. That door is sealed, the key melted down and forged into your crown. You've burned too many bridges to ever cross them again. And in those ashes you found the soil in which your freedom grows. They want your secrets, but you've grown fluent in the language of silence. They want your loyalty, but you've learned that loyalty given to the wrong hands is a knife pressed to your own throat. They want your vulnerability, but you know now that vulnerability is not owed. It is a gift, and only those who prove they won't weaponize it get to hold it. So you move differently now. You do not announce your plans. You do not explain your decisions. You do not advertise your dreams to ears that hope to sabotage them. You walk through rooms like a shadow, unbothered, unclaimed, untouchable. And in your quiet steps, they hear the roar of someone who cannot be cornered. They once wanted to own you. Now they worship you in secret. Not because you bend, but because you never did. The same ones who mocked your solitude now envy your peace. They dress their envy in gossip, their longing in rumors. They claim you are arrogant, selfish, cruel, because to admit the truth would be to admit their own chains. And that they will never do. Better to call you a villain than to see you as a mirror. So let them. Let them watch you build alone, rule alone, walk alone when needed. Let them wish for your return while you roam through your own wilderness, free as wind through uncharted lands. And know this, they want you more now than they ever did when you needed them. Everybody wants you when you don't need anyone. That is the Machiavellian secret. That is your silent, sovereign victory. And so you walk among them now, like an echo of something they once thought they understood. A figure they can no longer name, a presence they can't quite touch. They feel you before they see you. The air changes when you enter the room. A subtle tightening in their chests. A hush that has nothing to do with fear of what you might say, but of what you might not. You've become the question they can't answer. The lock they no longer have the key to. They wonder if you ever think of them, if you ever ache like they do. But you don't ache the same way anymore. The emptiness you once feared is now your sanctuary, a place you retreat to, not because you're banished, but because you've chosen to be out of reach. Your withdrawal is not punishment, it's a message carved in silence. Not everyone deserves access. Not every hand gets to turn your doorknob. Not every voice gets to shape your day. They gossip about you. They say you're distant, you're unfeeling, you're too good for them now. And in those words, they reveal everything about themselves and nothing about you. They can't comprehend that your distance is not arrogance, it's preservation. You've seen what happens when you let the unworthy too close. You've felt how their touch drains you dry. Now, you stand behind your walls, not to keep love out, but to keep parasites at bay. What they fear most is your ease. The ease with which you say no. The ease with which you walk away. The ease with which you watch the doors slam behind you and do not flinch. Because they know they could never do it. They are chained to their need for approval, for company, for belonging at any cost. They sell their souls for a seat at tables that serve poison. And you'd rather starve alone than be fed lies among traitors. Your solitude is not emptiness. It's a garden you've cultivated where no one else's weeds can grow. They want to believe you're just playing hard to get, that your distance is bait. But you are not bait. You are the ocean, deep, endless, unfathomable. Let them stand on the shore, throwing stones, hoping to provoke waves that drown them in your warmth again. The tide doesn't answer to their whims. You pull back when you choose, crash when you choose, remain calm when you choose. That is what frightens them most. You are weather they must endure. You are weather they must endure. They remember the old you, the one who over-explained every move, who offered apologies like confetti for sins you never committed. That ghost haunts them now, because it's gone forever. They hope to find a crack, a weakness, an old wound they can press their fingers into, but the scars you wear now are armored. They no longer bleed. They no longer sting. They remind you daily that you survived what they thought would break you, and that survival is the crown they can't steal. Machiavelli would tell you, when they fear your withdrawal more than they love your presence, you have won. When they tiptoe around your silence, you have become the unseen force that bends the room to your gravity. They call you the villain because it soothes their fragile pride, because it hurts too much to admit you are never theirs to control. But you wear that title like a cloak. Let them fear your name in the dark. Let them call you ruthless while they lie awake wondering what it would take to bring you back. But there is no coming back. You've become fluent in your own company. You speak the language of quiet power now. You understand that sometimes the only way to keep your soul intact is to guard it like a fortress. To stand at the gates and say, no more. Not you, not here, not ever again. And in that refusal, you become the thing they crave most. The one who cannot be swayed, cannot be played, cannot be bought. When you no longer need anyone, you stand alone, yes, but you stand free. And freedom, in the end, is worth every door you had to close, every hand you had to pry off your throat, every room you had to leave without looking back. They still want you. They always will. But you want nothing more from them than what they can never give. A leash they can no longer wrap around your neck. You are not their puppet anymore. You are the architect of your own silence, And in that silence, you have found the sweetest victory of all. You don't need them, and so they can never hold you hostage again. You are no longer merely a player. You are the author of an entire paradigm. In your wake, they scramble not just for scraps of your time, but for a glimpse of the autonomy you've distilled into living form. Your silence is not absence, but an emblem. It proclaims to the world that your worth is measured by nothing but your own standard. They learn, belatedly, that it was never about what you could give them, but what you refused to lose to them. Now, every door you close echoes louder than 1,000 speeches ever could. It reverberates through the corridors of their ambition, a reminder that authority cannot be borrowed or bartered. It must be claimed. And you have claimed it by withholding your submission. In that simple act of refusal, you rewrote the rules. You showed that power is not taken at the point of a sword, but at the tip of your tongue when you choose not to speak. It is the knife edge of sovereignty. Your voice, calibrated to strike only when you will it. Watch them reconstruct your legend through fractured tales. Some will call you a tyrant, others a savior. They will debate your motives, dissect your tactics, but they cannot replicate your resolve, because resolve is not a tactic, it is a consecration. It is the moment when you vow to yourself that no fear, no longing, and no accusation can weaken the fortress you've built within your mind. That vow is the sacred covenant between you and your untouchable self, and it cannot be broken. Their greatest mistake is believing that your solitude was born of despair. They imagine that exile is tragedy, but you know the truth. True exile is willingly chosen. It is a sovereign retreat where you refine your strengths away from the scaffold of public opinion. There, in the silence, your confidence crystallizes into unassailable clarity. You learn to pilot your destiny by the constellations of your own design, untethered from the erratic weather of other people's expectations. This is not a life of loneliness, but of unparalleled intimacy, with your own ambitions, your own values, your own unspoken potential. You are the first witness to your truth and the last judge of your actions. No committee of critics, no chorus of admirers, no council of peers can dictate the contours of the path you walk. Because that path begins and ends with you, an unbroken circuit of self-mastery. And when the world finally grasps at your legend, they will misunderstand its origin. They will seek to imitate the results, the silence, the distance, the power, and miss the genesis, the internal alchemy that transmuted fear into freedom. They will mimic your posture, but not your purpose. Replicate your distance, but not your devotion to self, so absolute that no outside force could ever threaten it. So let them chase the ghost of your shadow. Your real self stands beyond their reach. Let them fill pages with theories, spin rumors to fill the void. But know that every word they write is an admission of their own lack. For they write because they cannot speak. They speak because they cannot embody what you have become. You have given them a demonstration of the ultimate law. To need nothing is to be sovereign over all. And in that sovereignty lies your final triumph, the one no critic can undermine. You answered every doubt with your quiet resolve, every insult with your unbroken silence, every attempt to bind you with the simple revelation that you were never theirs to bind. This is the apex of your rebellion, not in the wreckage you leave behind, but in the empire you have built within. An empire that pulses with your unyielding will, an empire that can neither be besieged nor betrayed, an empire whose capital is your own unshakable soul, and from its throne you sit, not as a prisoner of the crowd, but as a monarch of your destiny, knowing that you have ascended beyond the reach of every chain they once dreamed could hold you.